On today's show, the Cavs finish off a sweep of the Miami Heat, and they ended Heat culture Monday night here on South Beach. We'll talk about all that and the series as a whole on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. And I want to say thank you to you for giving Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the show. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. The Cleveland Cavaliers on Monday night completed a 4-game sweep of the Miami Heat with a 138-83 victory. This is the largest winning margin by a team in an elimination game in NBA postseason history. The Cavs were absolutely dominant on Monday night in every facet of the game. They were dominant offensively. They had a great night offensively. They shot the ball really well, 22 of 47 from three, 54% overall. Nobody on the Cavs was inefficient. Like the closest thing, I guess maybe Max Strus, but I thought that he did such a good job defensively on Tyler Hero that you don't necessarily even think about that. But like Evan Mobley, 6 of 9, 17 points. Jared Allen, 5 of 5, 14 points. Sam Merrill, 3 of 7, 9 points. Donovan Mitchell, 8 of 15, 22 points. Like everybody for the Cavs was really good. There were no weak links for them in this game, and that's a big part of the reason why they won by 55. At one point, they led by 60 points, which I cannot recall ever happening in a postseason game. And I know, I put this out there on social media, and people replied that it reminded them a lot of conference finals against Boston in 2017, and that game will always come to mind where the Cavs led by more than 40 points at halftime. It was dominant, and that's kind of what this felt like, except that wasn't the end of the series. So much of the conversation going into this game was about how the closeout game is always the most difficult one. Getting the last win and clinching a series, historically speaking, and this is not as if the Cavs were just saying this to say this. This is, kind of how things go. It's often really hard, right? Like it's hard to beat a team 4 times in 7 games. And it's really hard to beat a team 4 straight times. That's why you don't see very many sweeps. There are only going to be 2 sweeps in the NBA in this first round of the playoffs, because it's a really, really hard thing to do. And you can sometimes see, and I mean, this happens in game 3 too. Obviously, that didn't happen on Saturday, but you will see teams that when their back is up against the wall, they're desperate and they play harder and they do things better because they know, hey, if we don't accomplish this, our season is over. And I expected the Miami Heat to have much more of that on Monday night than they did on Saturday. I think the time they had the most of it was probably last Wednesday in game 2 in Cleveland. Like that's where, Miami looks desperate tonight. That disappeared in games 3 and 4. But the thing that impressed me a lot, I don't know if it's the most impressive thing from Monday, but the thing that impressed me a lot is that the Cavs were able to find a way to have a sense of desperation, because I think it's a really difficult thing to manufacture. You're either desperate or you're not. And the Cavs played, and it was like this in game 3, but in game 4, it was really, really eye-opening. The Cavs played like the more desperate team. Like if you didn't have the score bug to look at, if you didn't have the knowledge of what happened in the previous 3 games, and you just watched the first quarter of this game, how hard the Cavs played made it look like, that team's season is on the line. Now, maybe you would just see the talent and say, no, it's just a way more talented team. And they are a much more talented team than Miami. There's no doubt about that. But you would watch the way the Cavs play, the style they play, the force that the Cavs played with in this game, and say that team has its back against the wall. Now, we know they didn't. They had a 3-0 series lead. But the fact that they were able to manufacture that, the fact that they were able to play as desperate of a game, play as hard as they did, when did they need to win this game? No. I talked about on yesterday's podcast about how I thought it was important they go out and have a good performance and win the game for resting purposes moving forward. And I asked Donovan Mitchell about the desperation thing, and the rest was the first thing he brought up. Like, they're desperate to get rest before the next series in some senses. And that makes sense. Certainly, that's something that I do think is probably a good way to look at things. And if you want to build in motivation, that is certainly a good carrot to dangle out in front, if you will. But the Cavs did a great job of that. And that was the one thing that, I expected so much more out of Miami, because we've heard so much about heat culture, right? And here we go. We have to talk about this, but I never want to hear heat culture mentioned again. Heat culture is done. And I understand that Miami's done a lot of really good things. The Cavs have a lot of respect for the Heat organizationally. I think every organization in the NBA has a lot of respect for who the Heat are as a franchise and what they have accomplished. But I never want to hear about heat culture again, because having a good culture and being the hardest working, meanest, nastiest, most physical, best conditioned team in basketball, which are all the tenets of Miami organizationally, nowhere in there does it say being down by 60 at home in an elimination game. Like, I'm sorry, like the Heat should be embarrassed for a long time about what happened on Monday night in this building. Now, I think more of it has to do with the Cavs, but the Heat let go of the rope on Saturday, and they let go of it much, much earlier on Monday night. And a big part of that is the Cavs are incredible. This team has risen to a new height so far in the postseason. Like, this series, I don't know if it should be eye-opening, because the Cavs were dominant in the regular season too. Like, they won 64 games. It's not as if this was a 4-5 matchup and the Cavs just blew the doors off a 5 seed. No, they were a 64 team that handled business and blew the doors off of a team that finished 10th in the East in the regular season. So it's a little bit more explainable. But the Cavs, I think, ended heat culture. I do. I don't think that we can hear about that anymore after this. I really don't think that, unless you're being facetious, I don't think heat culture should be a thing. It does not exist anymore. I don't know if it left when Jimmy Butler left. I don't know what happened, but that team that the Cavs played, that the Cavs snatched their soul, probably more so on Saturday, and Monday night was just a formality for everybody involved, but the Cavs didn't treat it like a formality. And I think that is one of the things that should be really impressive, is that the Cavs could have come into this game and expected Miami to lie down. They didn't expect that. The coaching staff expected Miami to put up a big fight. Guys in that locker room expected Miami to really put forth a fight. Like, this was something I walked into this building thinking this is going to be a close game. This is going to be a game where I thought the Cavs would win, but I thought it would be somewhere between like 7 and 12 points. It'd be that kind of victory, or maybe the Cavs pull away late. Maybe Miami fouls a couple of extra times and the Cavs hit free throws, and that adds cushion to the margin of victory. Never did I expect the Cavs to hold a 6-0 point lead in this game. I think it says more about the Cavs than it does the Heat. I really do, but I think it says a lot about the Heat too. I don't think it only talks about the Cavs' dominance. And the Cavs did this. I think the most impressive basketball thing from tonight is what the Cavs did defensively. Miami scored in the first quarter 17 points. And you often think, oh, well, it can't get much worse than that, right? It can't get worse than that. Well, the second quarter, they scored 16 points. The third quarter, they scored 30. And I think the Cavs at that point started to take their foot off the gas a little bit on that end. But flip to the other end of the court. Cavs' first three quarters, 43 points in the first quarter, 29 in the second quarter, 39 in the third quarter. And then the fourth quarter, Jalen Tyson, Tristan Thompson, Craig Porter Jr., and Javonte Green all played the entire quarter. Javonte didn't play the entire quarter, but he and Isaac Okoro split time, and Chumo Keki checked in as well, and he played 6 minutes. So that those fourth quarter stats don't matter to this conversation. Although I did like what I saw from some of those guys. I thought some of them played pretty well. But overall, the Cavs defensively suffocated Miami. And it was the case in game 3. It was the case again in game 4. And that is what really just jumped off the page. Tyler Hero's box score is incredibly telling, especially for somebody who talked a lot during this series, and I do think it's fair to say that Darius Garland had some role in starting that by saying the Cavs are just attacking them. But for Tyler to say after the Cavs were face guarding him that he likes that kind of defense and there are ways to expose it, for Miami to score 83 points the game after they score 87 points, and for Tyler Hero to go 1 of 10 and be a minus 44 in 30 minutes and 31 seconds on the floor, I think says a lot about what the Cavs did defensively. There was a point in this game where it felt like every time Tyler was touching the basketball, he was shooting the basketball. Why is that? Because it was so difficult for him to get his hands on the basketball. And I think Max Strus did a great job. I thought Dean Wade did a very good job. I thought DeAndre Hunter in the select possessions that he was on Tyler Hero did a very good job. Overall, the Cavs did a great job there. And it is almost as if, you know, the saying, you want to cut the head off the snake. Like, that's how you attack something. And the Cavs did that to perfection in these final 2 games of the series against Miami. Now, Tyler didn't have a good night. He didn't shoot the ball well. He was 1 of 9 from 3. Some of those looks were better than others. But I think the Cavs just overall did a great job of taking him out of this game. And I think Kenny Atkinson deserves a lot of credit for that. And his coaching staff deserves a lot of credit for that, because I came into this series thinking that Miami was one of a very small number of teams that the Cavs didn't have a distinct coaching advantage in the series against that team. And I still obviously have a lot of respect for who Eric Spoelstra is as a coach, for what he's done. And this series by no means says that Spo is not a good coach. Like, that's not true. That roster is very flawed, and the Cavs are very not flawed. So that is part of this conversation. It's not as if I think Spo is not a good coach anymore, but I came away so much more impressed with some of the adjustments that Kenny Atkinson and his staff made in this series. I thought that they had a phenomenal series. I want to talk about that a little bit more next. Plus, we will talk about what it means that the Cavs are able to do this, oh, by the way, without Darius Garland. That's all straight ahead right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check that bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment? It can be easy to lose track of all that cash that I know you got. That's where Monarch Money comes in, because they'll be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending right in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and you can start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan for some of those long-term goals, because I know that you've got long-term goals. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, because you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all of the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. I came away incredibly impressed with Kenny Atkinson in this series. I thought he did a great job. I thought that the adjustments that he made on both ends of the floor were really, really impressive. Obviously, moving to a strategy where the Cavs were top locking, which I explained on, I think it was Sunday's podcast, and I wrote about it at the Inside Shot. If you want to learn more, I don't want to necessarily dive into exactly what that is today, just for time purposes, because there's a lot to get to here. But moving to a strategy where they were top locking Tyler Hero and really forcing Miami to do other things offensively, I thought was a really big deal. Because if you look at the shot totals that Tyler had in this series, he took 10 shots in game 4, obviously was just 1 of 10, was a very, very poor performance from him. In game 3, Tyler Hero took 13 shots. He was 5 of 13. So a little bit of a better game, a little bit more. And, you know, I think he probably would have gotten to that number had he played the same number of minutes, because he only played 30 minutes because this was such a blowout in the game, where he played 40 plus in game 3. Game 2, 24 shots. Tyler Hero had a really good game, had 33 points. played 40 minutes. That's the reason why the Heat were in that game, was partially because Tyler Hero was so good. You go all the way back to game one, and game one's a little wonky because the Heat were on short rest, but he got 18 shots up. So after in games 3 and 4, his shot totals went down because of a really good adjustment that Kenny Atkinson and his coaching staff made to what the Cavs did defensively. And I do think part of this, and this does need to be talked about, because the Cavs had guys step up with Darius Garland not available. So he missed this game with a toe injury. I do not get the sense that this is something to be worried about. When the Cavs have game one against either Indiana or Milwaukee, in all likelihood it will be Indiana. When they have game one, probably this weekend, I would expect Darius Garland to be able to play. Nothing is set in stone, but my anticipation is that this is mild enough that he will be able to play in game one of the next series, especially now that the Cavs have rest, that they won't be playing for several days before that game. But they didn't have him. So the Cavs had to make adjustments on both ends of the floor. And part of that was some lineups that are different. In games 3 and 4, we saw lineups with Dean Wade, DeAndre Hunter, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, and Donovan Mitchell, or Ty Jerome, or Jared Allen instead of Evan Mobley. But we saw the triumvirate of Strus, Wade, and Hunter. That is about as good as the Cavs can get defensively. Now, in a certain series, and this doesn't matter anymore because Damian Lillard tore his Achilles, unfortunately. I feel really bad for him. I feel really bad for Bucks fans. But say the Cavs would have played Milwaukee with a healthy Damian Lillard. Maybe you want Isaac Okoro when they're defending Lillard rather than Max Strus. But for this particular series, Max is a better fit to defend Tyler Hero than Isaac Okoro is. So you saw that group play together. Where's the weak link on the wing? There's not one. That's part of the reason why Miami struggled so mightily. And all those guys, of course, are what? Really good shooters offensively. So when you pair them with Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, or Ty Jerome and Jared Allen, that's going to bring success on both ends of the floor. And that was something that was really found once Darius Garland was unavailable. And I do think when Garland is back, that is something that needs to be part of what the Cavs do. That lineup, and Garland could obviously be in there instead of Ty Jerome, but there are going to have to be times where the Cavs have lineups that don't have two of Jerome, Mitchell, and Garland. Because right now, when everybody's healthy, for the most part, two of those guys are always on the floor. I do think they're going to need to have some lineups where there are only one of those guys on the floor, because the depth the Cavs on the wing, that the Cavs have on the wing, I thought really, really was impressive in these games. And DeAndre Hunter was awesome. Obviously, in game 3, we talked about that over the weekend. He was also awesome, I thought, in game 4. He wasn't quite as efficient, but he hit 3 threes in this game. He was a plus 25 in 20 minutes. Ty Jerome was a plus 28 in 20 minutes. Like, that duo was awesome. And Ty hit a half-court buzzer beater that was great at the end of the third quarter. Davion Mitchell hit a half-court buzzer beater at the end of the first quarter. So Miami scored 17 points, as I mentioned, in the first quarter. 3 of them came at the horn on a half-court shot from Davion Mitchell. So really, that game was 43-14 until a prayer at the buzzer. That was basically the meme. We've all seen it. The Chris Paul hits a huge 3 to cut the lead to 42. That's what Davion Mitchell did at the end of the first quarter on Monday night. But defensively, I was so impressed with the Cavs. I keep getting back to, no matter what Miami tried, they didn't have an answer against Cleveland. The way the Cavs all moved as one defensively might be the most impressive part of it. The top blocking stuff on Tyler Hero is really good, and that was the thing that's going to be in the spotlight, and it should be, because that is Miami's best offensive player. But the way that when Miami could get the ball moving, the Cavs always had somebody there. The closeouts were great. The switches were great. The way they would scramble to kind of where the ball was going to be next, I came away just really, really impressed with. They always knew where to be on that end of the floor. They always knew where to be. And that is something that we didn't necessarily always see in the regular season. So I do think And listen, I get it. The Cavs are going to see better offenses than the Heat, much better offenses than the Heat. If they play Indiana in the second round, the Pacers are a much better offense than what Miami is. But I do think that what happened in this series should alleviate a lot of the concern that maybe was had by the end of the regular season for the Cavs defensively. They tried a lot of different things. And this is one of the things that I asked Kenny Atkinson about before this game. But they tried a lot of different things defensively during the regular season, and it didn't all go well. They kind of struggled at some things. It wasn't always pretty, right? Like Kenny talked about the switching early in the season that wasn't very good all the time. But that, I think, prepared them for the postseason. I think, did they need to do that to beat the Miami Heat? No, of course not. They need to do that to beat the Boston Celtics in the conference finals. But I do think a lot of the things that they tried during the regular season prepared them to be able to do those things at this level in the postseason. And I think we saw that tonight. I think we saw that in game 3. I think there are a lot of reasons to be concerned about the Cavs defensively, because of what they did in Miami, because of how they handled their business on that end of the floor. They're not going to have that same strategy against everybody, right? Like, I don't think that you can necessarily, because of the way the Pacers play, you can't top lock Tyrese Haliburton. Like, there's just not going to be a strategy because the ball is in his hands so much more. And because I think Indy has a few more guys that can dribble and Miami doesn't. But I thought that this was really, really impressive stuff by Kenny Atkinson and by his staff in what was a historic sweep. The Cavs outscored the Heat by 122 points in 4 games. That has never been done before in NBA history. That is the largest margin of victory in a sweep in NBA history. It felt like it. It did. It felt like the Cavs were playing a different sport at times than the Heat. I think Kenny Atkinson deserves a lot of the credit for that. Now, let's say, and they don't have this. This is not a thing, but I'm going to make up an award. If there is an Eastern Conference first round Cavs Heat MVP, who would it be? I'll tell you where my vote would go next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Wayfair. Spring is here, and that means it is home project season, right? It's time to get working on maybe that deck, patio. Maybe it's something on the interior, like your kitchen, your bathroom. I don't know what needs work in your home, but I bet something does. And you can refresh your room or tackle a full renovation. Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. Maybe it's a small upgrade, like a cabinet that needs to be fixed or just needs some updating, or a big upgrade, like a new vanity, new sink, outdoor lighting, because you want to spend more time outside in the spring and summer. Wayfair has quality products for all of it. And the best part, for every budget too. Wayfair's got great selection. They also have free and fast shipping that make it easy, so there's no hauling heavy items from the store to your home. Plus, Wayfair's got top brands like GE and Moen, and they've got them at great prices, because the price point, that matters, and Wayfair's got you covered there. Shopping is seamless. You'll find exactly what you need to fit your space and your style. So Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That is WAYFAIR.com, wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. If you're watching right now, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. There's not a series MVP for the first round, and there shouldn't be a series MVP for the first round. Maybe we give away a few too many awards. I don't know. But if there were a series MVP, I think it should be Donovan Mitchell. I do. And it's partially because of the on-the-floor stuff. It's also partially because of the off-the-floor stuff. I think Donovan Mitchell's leadership is a really big deal to this team. And I know I've talked about it here, and I know that I've been very quick to give him credit for taking a step back for Evan Mobley to thrive, for Darius Garland to thrive. I know I've talked about that a bunch. But he also stepped up when the team really needed him in this series. Game 1, who's the tone setter? It's Donovan. Scores 30 points, because of course he does. A lot of that story is Ty Jerome, and it should be, because he had a great game 1. But game 2, The Cavs blow a 19-point lead. They see their lead go down to as low as 2 points. What happens? Donovan Mitchell puts on the cape and saves the day because he's a superstar. Game 3, he doesn't play well, but that didn't matter because everybody else did. Game 4, there were 2 guys I thought that set the tone in this game. And of course, it's hard to name an MVP in a 55-point blowout victory, which is just an absurd thing to say, by the way. Like, that is still not set in, that the Cavs won a closeout game by 55 points. But I thought that there were 2 guys that set the tone. I thought it was Jared Allen, who, as I mentioned earlier, had that steal on the first possession and dunked. That was a big tone setter. And you know what else happened in the first few minutes of the game? Donovan Mitchell scored 8 points. Cavs were up 15-3. Donovan Mitchell had 8 points. And he was fired up. He was locked in. And it was already at that moment, there were still 44 and a half minutes left to play, but you knew the Cavs were winning that game right there. Like, Donovan Mitchell set that tone. Jared Allen did it too, but when I combine the tone setting that Mitchell did in this series and his heroics from game 2, I think he's your series MVP for the Cavs. I do. Now, obviously, that's not some bold take, right? Like, oh, the team's best player is the series MVP. Yeah, super original, super bold. But I think that all of that it matters, right? And I think that the Cavs took care of business, and they took care of business because the straw that stirs the drink, because the leader of the team handled the business, right? Like, he has, I think, such an impact on everybody else on this roster, on everybody else in this organization, that it's hard to look at this team. And yes, Donovan Mitchell could have scored no points on Monday night, and the Cavs would have won. He could have scored no points in game 3, and the Cavs would have won. I get all that. But I just don't know that they are. I think if this series is 1-1 coming to Miami, things feel a lot different. I do think that. And because game 2 was the close game, and I get that they won by 9 because the Heat fouled at the end and the Cavs hit free throws. So that margin of victory doesn't tell the complete story of the game. But I think that game, if that goes the other way, and it would have gone the other way if not for Mitchell, if that game goes the other way, I just think that the feeling on this series is so much different. And that's sort of the reason why I sit back and say, yeah, Donovan Mitchell, series MVP for me. I thought Ty Jerome was really good in this series. I thought defensively, Max Strus was outstanding in this series. Thought Evan Mobley did some really good things. Like, they're just really, other than Garland's injury, I don't think there are any bad things to say about this series. And I don't know how many times in Cleveland Cavaliers history you can say that. Because there have been series where the Cavs have swept, and this is the 11th 4-game sweep, I believe, in franchise history, where you can pick apart things. And if we want to talk about, game 2, okay. But for the most part, the Cavs were dominant. No team in NBA history had ever outscored an opponent by 122 points in a 4-game sweep. The Cavs did that. The Cavs looked incredibly dominant. Remember back when game 1, so this was back on Easter Sunday, the day the Cavs played the Heat in game 1. And Oklahoma City played Memphis, and they just blew their doors off. That game was at noon, and that is how they set the tone for their playoff run. And then they won game 2 by 19, and they won game 3 coming back from down by 29 because Ja Morant got hurt. And then they won game 4 against a Ja Morant-less Memphis Grizzlies team in not impressive fashion. The Cavs were kind of the opposite. Game 1 was impressive. Game 2 was not great, but then they turned it on when they went on the road. I think that is one of the best signs, and I think a lot of that gets back to who Donovan Mitchell is as a leader. I think that these 2 games in Miami in particular, because everybody expected the Cavs to go up 2-0 at home. Like, it was no surprise they won those games. But I think that these games in particular, if there were people doubting whether or not the Cavs' regular season success could translate to postseason success, I think that these 2 games in particular probably opened up a lot of eyes as far as that goes. Now, of course, the playoffs are far from over for the Cavs, This sweep means they advance to the Eastern Conference semifinals for the second consecutive year. They will, in all likelihood, be facing the Indiana Pacers. Pacers hold a 3-1 lead over the Milwaukee Bucks in that series. And as you know, Damian Lillard tore his Achilles and will be out for the rest of the season, probably all of next year too, but that doesn't matter for this conversation. Cavs Pacers, I think, will be very, very interesting. I'm going to spend time this week, obviously, looking ahead to that. We'll probably do a little bit more of a deep dive on just what this series was and what we learned from it in tomorrow's episode, and then we'll turn the page after that. But thank you for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today and every day. Really hope that you guys have enjoyed all of the content coming from Miami. My face is a little red. I got some sun. It was nice to see the sun. I have no idea what weather I'm going to be coming back to in Northeast Ohio. I have no idea, but it was nice to see the sun in Miami. I can't lie to you. It was very nice to be down here. But thank you for supporting the show, for making stuff like this possible. Without you guys, I cannot bring you feet on the ground coverage at road playoff games, at road regular season games like I did. So I very, very much appreciate all that you guys do for Locked on Cavs. And the thing you can do is share the show with a friend. If you've got a Cavs fan in your life, it's like, hey man, check out Locked on Cavs. That's the best way you can help the show. So thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. As I said, be a friend, tell a friend about Locked on Cavs. And if you're watching on YouTube, as we get out of here, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs content. I will be back tomorrow. Maybe we'll start looking ahead. Maybe we'll take a deep dive. I don't know, but Locked on Cavs will be back tomorrow.